Hello and welcome to another Bible in the News. This week the war between Israel and the Hamas terrorists is capturing all the headlines again. In this episode of the Bible in the News we dive deep into what some of the recent developments mean in the light of Bible prophecy. There is an interesting prophecy about the territory of Gaza in Joel chapter 3. Joel 3 is all about the time after the Jews have returned from their captivity, verse 1. This is our time, post-1948, when the independence of the Israeli state was declared, and post-1967, when Jerusalem came again into Jewish hands. The prophecy is about a great war which takes place when God will gather all nations to be judged at the Battle of Armageddon. A detail about the reaction of the local peoples to this gathering of the nations is hinted at in verse 4. Quote, "Yea, and what have ye to do with me, O Tyre and Zidon, and all the coasts of Palestine?" End quote. Tyre and Zidon are located north of Israel in Lebanon, the location of the terrorist group Hezbollah. This group have been reported this week as firing rockets into Israel. Israeli villagers in the north have left their homes fearing an invasion from Hezbollah, who are certainly fulfilling the requirements of the prophecy, along with Hamas in Gaza, who would answer to the reference to the coasts of Palestine in the prophecy. According to the prophecy, God is going to judge these areas. He says, quote, "I return your recompense upon your own head," end quote. And there is a reason given, quote, "Because ye have taken my silver and my gold, and have carried into your temples my goodly pleasant things, the children also of Judah and the children of Jerusalem have ye sold unto the Grecians, that ye might remove them far from their border," end quote. Joel 3, verses 5 and 6. Now, although no news has been heard of Hamas selling captives, they have nonetheless taken them in the horrific attacks on Israel on the 7th of October. On October 20th, Reuters reported that, quote, "an estimated 200 people, including 30 teenagers and young children, and 20 people over the age of 60, are being held hostage in Gaza," Israel's public broadcaster Kan said on Thursday, citing military sources, end quote. The spirit of hatred that these groups, located in the areas condemned by the prophecy, are a sure sign of the times. At the time of the recording of this episode, Israel's army, the IDF, is poised to enter the Gaza Strip to take back their hostages. After advising civilians to leave the northern area, Israel has been bombarding Hamas strongholds from the air. The Western media has had a full week reporting on the conflict and on the whole has now turned against Israel. Major media outlets have been exposed as swallowing and then reporting wholesale Hamas propaganda. One such event was an incident on the evening of Tuesday, the 17th of October, where an explosion occurred in what was recorded to be at the Al-Ahli hospital in Gaza. It turns out this was not a hit on the hospital itself, but on a nearby car park. Hamas was quick to blame Israel. However, it turns out the blast was caused by a rocket fired from within Gaza. Even after audio evidence of recording of two Hamas fighters discussing the incident and saying the missile belongs to the PIJ group and was fired from a cemetery behind the hospital, and video evidence from the IDF showing this to be true, the media have still continued to report the story as if this was up for interpretation. As an example of the bias being promoted in parts of the media, listeners are encouraged to listen to a heated interview between Sky's Anna Boating and Israeli government spokesman Mark Regev. Mark Regev calls out the biased reporting of Anna Boating, who was reporting without question figures that Hamas had released. He also insisted Israel did not target hospitals, were trying to avoid innocent civilians, and that there was no evidence that Israel attacked the hospital. Watch the interview in the link that we supplied on the Bible in the News website. This reminds us of the prophecies about the people of Israel fulfilled in the spirit of anti-Semitism which is at large in the world today. Deuteronomy says of the Jews that they would become an astonishment, an appalment, or a horror, as that word means according to the outline of biblical usage, a proverb and a byword among all nations, Deuteronomy 28 verse 37. No doubt these events, which are causing protests against Israel in many nations, will eventually build up to the great battle of Armageddon, which will see the armies of the nations of the world come against the Jews on the mountains of Israel, as prophesied in another prophecy in Ezekiel chapter 38 and at verse 8. Ezekiel 38 is a prophecy related to Joel chapter 3. It too is about the time when the Jews have returned again to their land, see verse 8 and 12. The list of nations who come against Israel is given in verses 1 through 9. Amongst others, it is an alliance of nations which includes Russia and Iran, listed by their ancient names of the Rus and the Persians, respectively. It's therefore of interest that both Russia and Iran have spoken very favourably of the attack on Israel by Hamas, and that it's no secret that Iran have been shipping arms and supplies to Hezbollah. Many experts suspect that the attack by Hamas was orchestrated by Iran to try to put a stop to Israel doing a peace deal with Saudi Arabia. In verse 13 of Ezekiel 38, we read of Sheba and Dedan and the merchants of Tarshish with all the young lions thereof, who seem to feebly challenge the invading nations. They say, "Art thou come to take a spoil?" They are clearly not on the side of the aggressors. Dedan is the ancient name of the peoples living in the territory now known as Saudi Arabia. Tarshish has been identified as the ancient name for Britain, her young lions being independent colonies like the US. It's therefore been interesting that this week we have seen American Prime Minister Joe Biden fly to Israel, and the White House recorded that, quote, "Today, President Biden travelled to Israel to stand in solidarity with the people of Israel in the wake of horrific terrorist attacks by Hamas that killed more than 1,300 innocent civilians, including at least 31 US citizens. As the president made clear during the trip, Israel is not alone, and with US support, it will remain a safe, security, Jewish and democratic state today, tomorrow, and forever." End quote. Also this week, British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak visited Israel. The New York Times reported on the 19th of October, quote, "Speaking alongside Mr. Netanyahu on Thursday, Mr. Sunak said he was proud to stand with the Israeli leader in Israel's darkest hour. He added that Britain will stand with you in solidarity. We will stand with your people, and we also want you to win." End quote. We can see then the nations forming into the groups the prophecies tell us they will be in just before the Lord Jesus Christ returns to the earth. As Bible students, we know that ultimately a great time of trouble is coming to the people of Israel. We read of this in Jeremiah 30, quote, "Alas, for that day is great, so that none is like it. It is even the time of Jacob's trouble, but he shall be saved out of it." End quote. We know God has a plan and a purpose. To humble his people, to bring them to him, to give them a new covenant, Jeremiah 31:31. And that this will be fulfilled by their Messiah, the Lord Jesus Christ, when he returns to save them, and then to sit on the throne of his father David in Jerusalem. In that day he will re-establish God's kingdom on the earth, and restore again the kingdom to Israel. Therefore, as we watch and we wait for Christ's return, although saddened by the horrors of war, we know that God is in control, and will bring that time of peace to the earth when he eventually fills it with his glory. We will end this week's episode looking forward to that time through the prophetic words of Psalm 122, a song of degrees of David. I was glad when they said unto me, Let us go into the house of the Lord Yahweh. Our feet shall stand within thy gates, O Jerusalem. Jerusalem is builded as a city that is compact together, whither the tribes go up, the tribes of Yahweh, unto the testimony of Israel, to give thanks unto the name of Yahweh. For there are set thrones of judgment, the thrones of the house of David. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. They shall prosper that love thee. Peace be within thy walls, and prosperity within thy palaces. For my brethren and companions' sake I will now say, Peace be within thee, because of the house of Yahweh our God. I will seek thy good.